I've done this for a full year now. This is my 12th one. The first one I did was last August, and now I'm doing July of this year, and so that's a full year of these, and I'm no wiser, I'm no happier. Nothing's happened in that year. It's just been a pretty standard year, but happy anniversary. And here's to another year of these rambling bullshit videos. I watched some really good stuff this month, so let's dive in to everything I watched in July 2024. Wonka. This was my sister's birthday was coming up, and she said she wanted to watch Wonka again, so I put two and two together. I got her the DVD for her birthday. So we watched it, and it's just so wonderful. It's such a wonderful film. And it blows my mind that Timothée Chalamet can do these really brooding, really serious, dramatic acting roles, and can then pivot and go immediately to doing like the silliest comedy imaginable. He's a great Wonka. I don't know if he's quite matches Gene Wilder. I think Gene Wilder is in a league of his own. But he's better than Johnny Depp. He's much more fun in the role than Johnny Depp. And just the musical numbers and the gags and just everything lands, and it's such a wildly entertaining film. And it kind of hits you in the feels. All the stuff with Noodle, and she wants to find out who her mom is, and all that stuff's really touching. And when it culminates at the end of the film, it's like a tearjerker. It's just such a great film, such a beautiful film. House of the Dragon Season 2. This season's been a mixed bag for me. I think it got off to a really great start, and that the battle scene that I think was in episode 4 maybe, where you had Aegon and Rhaenys flying up in their dragons, and I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it was a very eventful, very action-packed, very cool episode. And then since then, it's kind of just been treading water. It's been a very slow burn, but you can't expect a huge action-packed battle every single week. They need to build up to it, so I'm sure they're building up to another cool thing like episode 4. I haven't been loving Daemon's storyline, where he's just off on some island doing his own thing, having visions. That seems to just be completely filler. And his whole back and forth with Rhaenyra and Matt Smith's chemistry with Emma Darcy was one of the things that was so cool about season 1. And so by sending Daemon off to do all this inconsequential bullshit, you're robbing us of that. You're robbing us of that chemistry and that great character dynamic. So I hope that comes to an end soon, and he can get back to being a part of the main storyline and not off on his own C plot in the middle of nowhere. Jersey Girl. I did my ranking of every Kevin Smith film ranked, and I put Jersey Girl like way near the bottom, maybe even like second from the bottom or third from the bottom. But I actually hadn't seen it in like 10 years. I hadn't seen it since I was a teenager, because when I first watched it then, I hated it. I was like a huge Kevin Smith fan. I loved Clerks and Chasing Amy and Jay and Silent Bob, and so I was trying to get my hands on every single Kevin Smith film I could, and I came across this DVD of Jersey Girl in a charity shop, and I was expecting another film like Clerks or another film like Chasing Amy, very vulgar, juvenile, crass kind of comedy. And it's completely the opposite. It's Kevin Smith doing something totally different. It's like a saccharine, sentimental dramedy about like a guy. Ben Affleck plays a guy whose wife died in childbirth or complications from childbirth, something like that. So now he's grieving the loss of his wife, and he has to raise his daughter on his own. And at the time, looking back on it, I pretty much hated it for not being Clerks. But when I posted the video, I got some comments, and they were all very nice, very respectful, but one of them said, you shouldn't have put Jersey Girl so low. It doesn't deserve to be so low. And that kind of made me think, well, I've not seen it in a long time, and I only saw it the once. So maybe I've misjudged it, or maybe I would reappraise it if I watched it today. So I watched it again, and I completely agree with them. If I was doing that video again now, Jersey Girl would be so much higher. Jersey Girl would probably be in like the top 10. Because it's, even Kevin Smith himself for years has derided Jersey Girl and mocked it and said it's his worst film ever. And he never went back to do something like that again, to do something sweet and saccharine and family-friendly. But watching it again, I actually loved it. It wasn't just like, oh, I didn't hate it this time. I actually really liked it. I thought all the stuff with Ben Affleck and the kid was really touching, and the little kid playing his daughter was so great. She was only about 7 or 8 years old in it. But she had real acting chops. Like she was really funny, and she could do the dramatic scenes. And you really buy that her and Ben Affleck are this father and daughter. And George Carlin plays Ben Affleck's dad, who he lives with and who helps him raise the kid, and he was wonderful, as you'd expect. He's so obviously funny, but he was like a great actor too. So I take back all the negative things I said about Jersey Girl in that video, and if I was doing it again, if I was doing the Snyder cut of that video, I would bump Jersey Girl way up. I think in the video it's ranked below Yoga Hosers, which is crazy, because Yoga Hosers, I don't despise it, but it's not good. And Jersey Girl's good. Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. This I thought was fantastic. I stuck it on. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if it was going to be a slightly exaggerated version of Weird Al's real life story, or if any of it would be real, or if all of it would be real. But I think it's safe to say it's very, very fictionalized. It's, you know, Pablo Escobar is said to be the world's biggest Weird Al fan, and Al ends up having to go into the jungle and massacre the entire Medellin cartel. And he has this tumultuous romance with Madonna. It's all made up, but was such a great parody of music biopics. It reminded me of Walk Hard, where it takes all the tropes of a musician biopic that like deifies and glorifies its subject and glosses over the dark stuff and sensationalizes, like it takes them coming up with their first hit song and turns it into this momentous occasion when really it's probably just an idea came to them and they wrote it down and something came of it. But they have like Al is making himself a bologna sandwich while his friend is listening to My Sharona, and he connects the two in his head. Daniel Radcliffe was so funny as Weird Al, and Evan Rachel Wood, I think it was great as Madonna. It was honestly like one of the funniest films I've seen in recent years. It was like for something that, you know, it started off as a Funny or Die short, and usually when they take a short or a sketch and stretch it out to a feature-length film, it's dreadful, and it's one joke stretched out for an hour and a half. But this was so funny. There's so many jokes and so many great actors in it, and just the way it plays around with like how biopics of musicians take artistic liberties with the real story, but it like does it in such an absurd way. I thought it was really great. I thought it was so funny. The Last of Us. I rewatched season 1 of The Last of Us, and I actually hadn't played either of The Last of Us games before the show came out, and the show got me so invested in this story and the characters of Joel and Ellie and the world that I played the games and have since voraciously played and replayed those games over and over again on a loop. And so at this point, I've probably played The Last of Us Part 1 like 15 times all the way through. And it was interesting to go back and rewatch the show, now knowing the game inside and out, and being able to pick up on little Easter eggs and things that they threw in there. And I find all the changes that they made really interesting. I mean, some fans of the game, I think, wanted just a completely straight adaptation of the game, and the show deviates so much from the game. But it deviates... It doesn't just deviate from the story for the sake of it. It deviates to bring new depth to things that are in the game. Like in the game, Frank is dead, and he and Bill broke up a long time ago. And we get a hint that they had a relationship. But in the show, we get like their 20-year love story, and it's completely beautiful. And it's Nick Offerman and Maury Bartlett play it fantastically, and you know, that was a great addition to the game. And now you play the game, you read Frank's suicide note saying "fuck you, Bill," and it suddenly has so much more impact because now we know who Frank is. We know Frank, and it's great to see little backstory things like the Dick Cavett show in the opening episode, where you have John Hannah talking about how if the planet were to get a bit warmer, then a fungus could rise up and take over the human brain, and it would be unstoppable, and it would be incurable. You know, that was such an ominous way to start the series. And then you've got the whole prologue with Sarah, and in the game you start off as Sarah in her bedroom in the middle of the night, and she's trying to find Joel, and all the shit's starting. But in the show, they start off in the morning, and you go through Sarah's whole day. She goes to school, and she gets Joel his watch for his birthday, and you get to know Sarah so much more, so that when she dies, it's even more heartbreaking than it is in the game. And getting the whole backstory of Ellie's mom, and the fact she's played by Ashley Johnson is just so beautiful and such a great connection, and brings it all full circle. And I mean, I didn't love all the additions. I'm really not interested in the character of Kathleen, the character played by Melanie Lynskey. And I love Melanie Lynskey. I love her in Yellow Jackets and 2.5 Men. She's a fantastic actor, and she's great as Kathleen. I just don't think that character was necessary at all. In the game, in Pittsburgh, which they changed to Kansas City for the show, Joel and Ellie team up with Sam and Henry to escape the city because the city's overrun by hunters who just hunt down survivors and kill them and take their shoes and their clothes and whatever food they have, you know, and that's enough just to know that there are these evil people out there who want to kill them. We don't need to know a whole backstory that Henry was a collaborator and the leader of the revolution, wants revenge for the death of her brother. You know, I just felt like all the stuff with Kathleen took away from the spotlight from Joel and Ellie, and she's not that interesting of a character. She's certainly not interesting enough to take screen time away from Joel and Ellie for. But that's a minor gripe, because she's in, what, 2 episodes? It's, aside from that character I didn't love, it's basically a perfect adaptation. And I can't wait to see what they do with season 2. I've been loving seeing all these set photos, and seeing them bring all these scenes from part 2 to life in live action. It's amazing. So I can't wait to see where season 2 goes, and I can't wait to see what they expand on in that and what they change in that, and how they split it all up, because part 1 is a very linear story, and season 1 of the show could just take that and just tell the entire story in one season. But part 2 is so non-linear and so all over the place, and different perspectives. It'll be interesting to see how they chop that all up into the TV show. Poolman. This is the directorial debut of Chris Pine. And I love Chris Pine. I love him in Wonder Woman and Star Trek and Unstoppable, the runaway train film. I love him in everything I've seen him in, except for this. This was awful. I remember when it came out, when it first premiered at the festivals, and it just got absolutely roasted by critics. And, months and months later, now it's popped up on Prime Video, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a go, see if it really is that bad. And it really is that bad. I mean, it's basically Chris Pine as the dude style character, like the easygoing LA hippie who kind of lives off the grid and marches to the beat of his own drum and gets swept up in a noir storyline. But it just was so boring. Like the noir storyline of The Big Lebowski, where he's sent for a cash drop off and then they don't make the drop off and then the bad guys are coming after him and the Big Lebowski's coming after him and it's an exciting storyline. It's an exciting mystery storyline. Whereas Poolman, he's just in and out of court trying to plead about the water distribution in Los Angeles and and that whole thing with the water rights in LA, and they even have, he watches Chinatown in the film. It's basically trying to be a comedic version of Chinatown. And I don't know if you've ever seen Chinatown, but it doesn't very much open itself up to parody. It's a very grim, dark fucking movie. So it doesn't really work to take that and try and do a comedy version of it. And this had a fantastic cast. Jennifer Jason Leigh was in it, and Annette Bening, and Danny DeVito, and they're all completely squandered because it's terrible script. It's not funny, it's boring. I didn't like it at all. It's like an hour and a half long, and it felt fucking 3 or 4 hours long. I don't recommend this. All the critics who hated it when they watched it at the festival were correct. They were correct in their assessment. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. This I actually really fucking loved. This was so good. This was probably the best Beverly Hills Cop sequel they've ever done. Which isn't saying much because 2 was okay, but Tony Scott made it more as an action film than a comedy. Whereas the original, the genius of it was that it's a perfect balance of like an 80s police action movie and an Eddie Murphy comedy. And 3 was just dreadful. 3 was fuck awful. But this one, the 4th one that just came out on Netflix, was great. I loved it. It has like an emotional storyline with Axel trying to reconnect with his daughter, and it was great to see Rosewood and Taggart back, but it was also great to see Axel with a new partner, with this young guy Joseph Gordon-Levitt played, who's his daughter's ex-boyfriend, and that was a fun dynamic to play with. And Eddie Murphy just like Coming to America with the number 2, the sequel, whether it was Coming to America. He's basically playing Eddie Murphy. He's not really playing Akeem. He's not really playing the character that you recognize from Coming to America 1. But in this, he's playing Axel Foley. He's, in a lot of his recent films, in Coming to America and in You People, and in a couple of recent films that Eddie Murphy's been in, he's been kind of low energy. So I was worried about him reprising the role as Axel, because Axel is so high energy. But he brings that back. He's back to high energy Eddie Murphy in this. And it's, the police procedural plot with the conspiracy and the bad guys and the double crossing that's all whatever, but the same could be said of the plot of the first one. That's not what you come into these films for. It's to see Axel get himself into these crazy situations and have to talk his way out of them. And that spirit is all through this new film. So I loved it. It was a very welcome return to one of my favorite film characters ever created. Futurama. This was the show I was kind of falling asleep to this month. I was going through the golden era, which I consider to be like the first 4 seasons before the first cancellation. Because after those 4 seasons, it becomes a bit of a mess. You've got like a season that was 4 movies split up into episodes, and then you've got a couple seasons where it was on Comedy Central, now it's on Hulu. But those 4 initial seasons on Fox is like the golden age. And they were like a staple of my childhood, and it was a joy to revisit them ahead of this new season coming out on Hulu. Which I will watch, but I haven't been loving the new Hulu episodes. Escape from LA. I love Escape from New York, but I never watched Escape from LA, the sequel, because the critics seem to all agree, and fans seem to agree, that it was terrible and a huge letdown. And now that I have seen Escape from LA, I agree with them. It's pretty, Escape from New York is so cool, and Snake Plissken is so fucking cool in it. And this was just lame. This was just not cool. This is like Snake surfs on a tidal wave, and it was more Big Trouble in Little China than Escape from New York. Escape from New York is this cool, gritty, dystopian action thriller. And Big Trouble in Little China is like a a silly, subversive slapstick comedy that takes what you think is going to be this mysterious, mystical action film and makes it ridiculous. This was ridiculous. Escape from LA is ridiculous. It's like a Pierce Brosnan Bond film. It was not at all a worthy successor to Escape from New York. Escape from New York probably should have been left as a standalone thing. Although I did read that John Carpenter wanted to do a sequel to Escape from LA called Escape from Earth, which sounds like it would have been Snake Plissken Goes to Space, which would have been pretty fucking cool. Maybe he should have done that instead of Escape from LA, because he killed the franchise with Escape from LA. And Escape from Earth sounds a million times better. The Great Escaper. This is another one that was a gift, because I'm such a generous person. I got my dad, he had mentioned he wanted to watch this movie, and we're both big fans of Michael Caine. I mean, who isn't? And so Father's Day came up, I got him this on DVD, and we watched it, and it's delightful. It's Michael Caine's like an old World War II veteran who was at Normandy on D-Day. And it was a true story. On the 70th anniversary of D-Day, they were holding like a commemoration ceremony in France. And he wanted to go, but the nursing home he's staying in, they were supposed to sort it all out, and they couldn't get him a spot on one of the sort of group trips that are going over there. But he really wants to go. He feels like he needs to go, not only to pay his respect, but because there's a whole thing he's keeping a secret, and he needs to get closure on it. Which I won't spoil what it is, but so basically his wife, who's played wonderfully by Glenda Jackson, she was hilarious in this. She encourages him, if you need to go, if you need to do this, then just go. And so he just takes off and makes his own way to France. And as the nursing home calling the police and asking around trying to see where he's gone, because Glenda Jackson keeps her mouth shut, she doesn't tell them where he's gone, he becomes like national news, like his face is all over the news. And all that stuff was hilarious. That was like a fun caper. But as he gets to Normandy and he's talking to some fellow veterans and they're going over it, and it also becomes this serious reflection on the war and on this whole generation of kids who happened to be the wrong age at the wrong time, and they all got sent off to fight in war and were stuck with these lifelong traumas completely against their will. It was just a really beautiful film. I mean, Michael Caine was fantastic in it as always, and it was directed really well, and it's just was so moving. I highly recommend it because it's a feel-good movie, but it also goes to these deeper, dramatic places, and obviously Michael Caine can handle that stuff. It was just an incredible performance. A Quiet Place Day One. There's another one I went and watched with my dad, and I didn't love it. He really liked it, but he also slept through the boring parts. So maybe if I had slept through the boring parts, I would have liked it too. But I feel like the film, it was an interesting concept to do the day the aliens arrived. Even though they did do that in A Quiet Place Part 2, the opening scene, which was incredible. It's like John Krasinski and Emily Blunt and their kids are at like a local baseball game, and suddenly aliens arrive and start ripping people to shreds, and there's all these great long takes. There's like the one with the camera in the car as Emily Blunt's trying to escape the carnage, and you see the aliens going all over. But this does put a fresh spin on it. I thought like, well, why do we need the feature version? We got the great short version there. But that was in like a rural small town, and this is in New York City. And there were some really tense sequences. There's a bit where Lupita Nyong'o sort of blends into this massive crowd that's trying to move through New York. Everyone's trying to get to the boats to get out of the city and get onto the water because the aliens can't swim. But she's terminally ill, so she actually has no interest in surviving anyway because she knows she's gonna die anyway. She just wants to make sure her cat is okay and someone's gonna look after her cat. But then she meets Joseph Quinn, who's just like a law student who's there, who's just scared, and he latches onto her. And even though she has no interest in surviving and she's just looking for the perfect opportunity to die, he decides to like stay with her the whole time just because he feels safe and comfortable with her even though he just met her. And I feel like the film wanted me to be way more invested in their love story than I actually was. There's a whole sequence where they like are on a date. They like have a silent date, and he's being very charming and very romantic, and she's wooed by that. And I feel like I was supposed to like fall in love with that scene, but I was kind of just bored. I didn't love it on the whole, but there was some really great suspense sequences, and it's still just a great concept. I think, I've seen a lot of people saying like, okay, I think we're done with A Quiet Place now. I've had 3 films, that's enough. But I still think there's juice in this premise, because the concept really opens itself up to tension. The idea that you have to be completely silent, and if you make a peep, a bloodthirsty alien's gonna swoop in and rip you to shreds. I love that concept. I think that's a great concept. And this Day One does some really interesting things with that concept. It also does some weird, like, lore building where you find out that, I didn't even really understand it. There was like an aliens thing where Joseph Quinn goes into like the hive, and he sees like the giant queen alien, with a load of eggs, but the eggs don't contain little aliens. The mother calls in the little baby aliens and they eat the egg. So I don't think we need to expand on the mythology anyway. I think the less we know about these aliens, the better. But if you are gonna expand the mythology, at least make it make sense. But whatever, it was fine. You know, Lupita Nyong'o was a fantastic actor, and she was great in this. But, you know, I wasn't blown away by it or anything. Fancy Dance. This is the new film with Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon on Apple TV+. And, you know, explores the very real, very heartbreaking thing that Native American women either go missing or are murdered all the time. It was also explored in the film Wind River. Like, there's just a really high murder rate for Native women. And in this story, Lily Gladstone's sister has gone missing, and she's holding out hope that they'll find her. But everyone around her seems to think that the reality is she's probably been killed. If they find her, they're going to find her dead. And while her sister's missing, she's looking after the sister's kid, her niece, who's getting ready for a powwow, which I'd heard the term powwow, because as with anything in Native culture, white people have taken it and made it mean something else. Because there's like the whole thing in Seinfeld with Kramer and Jackie Childs talking about having a powwow, but it's in real Native culture, it's a dance, it's an event, and it's a celebration, and so the niece is looking forward to it. And Lily Gladstone's determined to get her to this powwow no matter what. Like when social services take her away and give her to other family members, Lily Gladstone basically just comes in and kidnaps her to take her to the powwow. And their relationship was so beautiful, like the auntie-niece relationship between Lily Gladstone and this kid was really touching. And it was a really engaging film. Like, there's some really tense, suspenseful sequences as she's going around asking after her sister and talking to some really dangerous people. And, you know, and obviously it's really sad. I mean, you don't tell this story and have this premise and not have it be really, really sad. But it wasn't just bleak and miserable. It was really kind of beautiful and hopeful. I loved it. Baghead. This I didn't love. This Baghead, I actually, funny enough, I think I talked about it in my very first Everything I Watched video, or one of the first, but there's another film called Baghead from about 15 years ago with Greta Gerwig in, like a found footage thing about a bunch of actors trying to write a horror film for themselves about a killer with a bag on his head, and they start getting tormented by a killer with a bag on his head. And it became this really fun, subversive meta thing. This was nowhere near as clever, nowhere near as original. I mean, exemplified by the fact it just took its title. This was about, I hate it so much, I don't even really remember what happened in it, but it was kind of like this young woman inherits a pub, and in the basement she finds this creature, Baghead. It's like a shapeshifter with a bag on its head, and it can manifest itself into loved ones who have died, and you can talk to your loved ones. And I mean, that is actually kind of an interesting premise to explore grief. And, you know, people talk to their dead loved ones, and then in a really hackneyed version of the Twilight Zone, they face horrific consequences for it. But it was just terrible. It relied so much on jump scares, and they weren't scary because there was no build up to them. It was just jump, jump, jump. And, you know, the way the plot progresses and all the character relationships evolve is just nonsense. It was fucking awful. I hated it. This was another Poolman, where it felt 2 million hours long, even though it was only about an hour and a half long. The Boys Season 4. This, I was enjoying the sort of first half of this season, and then it started to get really meandering and you know, like, for how much longer can the boys keep infiltrating these places where the soups are to get intel? How much fucking intel do you need? And all the stuff, I think I talked last month about how great the arc with Huey's dad was, and how great Simon Pegg's performance was, and how heartbreaking all that was. But to then pivot straight from that to Huey is like getting sexually assaulted in Tech Knight's Batcave, and it's played for laughs. That was the most fucked up part, because I was watching it and I was so disturbed by it, and I was initially thinking, okay, maybe this is the idea, because this is a very disturbing thing being played really realistically. Maybe it's supposed to be disturbing. And then Eric Kripke, the showrunner, goes into an interview and says, no, that wasn't supposed to be disturbing. That was supposed to be hilarious. We thought that was so funny. And what? You thought that was funny? So then it started to be like, okay, maybe the creator's intentions aren't quite in the right place. But even that, as an isolated thing, I could forgive that. But it just seemed like House of the Dragon, where it's, you know, treading water a bit, and it's delaying its payoffs more and more. But then the finale was fucking awesome. That was like mind-blowing, and so much crazy shit happened, and you know, huge twists. They're gonna have huge ramifications for season 5. But I do think it's good that season 5 is gonna be the last one. And the ending of season 4 has set the stage for a great season 5. And hopefully they just know what they're doing. They know, you know, how they're gonna end it, and it'll bring the whole thing full circle, and it'll feel like a satisfying ending. That's all I want. I'm not asking for much. I just want this TV show to have a perfect ending. They can do that, surely. The Best Years of Our Lives. This one I'd never seen before, and I was trepidatious about watching it because it's 3 hours long, which is crazy. I mean, it's pretty standard now for a big blockbuster to be 3 hours long. But in the 40s, that was a very, very long film. And a lot of these times, you watch things that were groundbreaking then, but now, like 70 or 80 years later, there's been like 200 stepping stones in the innovation of cinema since then, so they don't play quite as mind-blowing as they did back then. But I thought The Best Years of Our Lives was amazing. I thought it was a great film. It's, all about these guys' lives after they've come back from war, and it's all these various different versions of how they readjust to civilian life and how they move back in with their families and reacquaint themselves. And it's just a really interesting exploration of like the psychological impact of war and the social impact of war. And it was great. It really holds up. I mean, it's not like it doesn't play like an old-timey movie. It has this clip to it that feels very modern. And it's very much about the aftermath of World War II, which then was the most relevant thing in the world in 1946. And it's not quite so relevant now. But the core theme of the aftermath of war is timeless, because there's always war going on, and there's always people trying to move past it and come back and readjust to a normal life. Dirty Dancing. When I was a kid, Dirty Dancing was like one of my favorite movies. And at the time, I had no idea the deeper themes it's playing with. I had no idea about the class divide it's playing with, where Baby comes from this very rich, waspy family and community, and Johnny and all the staff are like poor, and that the whole film's about breaking down that divide, and they love each other in spite of their cultural differences and their different backgrounds. And I had no idea about all the abortion stuff, like when Johnny's friend needs an abortion and she gets the back alley abortion, and Baby's dad has to come in and help her. And I had no idea what was going on when I was a kid. I thought she was sick or something. So it was interesting to revisit it and understand all that stuff, understand the context of rich versus poor and Roe versus Wade. And it's just a great film. I mean, normally you go back, you watch something that was like your favorite thing as a kid, and you see it in the harsh light of day and think, this is nowhere near as great as I thought, but it fucking is great. And Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze have such great chemistry, and it's so electric. I really enjoyed rewatching it. Hundreds of Beavers. This I fucking loved. This, I hadn't seen any trailer for it or anything. I had just heard there's this movie, Hundreds of Beavers, that's become it's like a tiny little indie film that's become this massive cult hit around the world. And it was released in UK cinemas for one night only. It was like a Tuesday. And I told my dad and my sister they're showing this thing, Hundreds of Beavers, for one night. I know nothing about it, but it's supposed to be funny. Do you want to watch it? And we all gave it a chance, and we went down. We had no idea what to expect. And it's so much fucking fun. It's like a slapstick, cartoony comedy about a fur trapper in the wilderness who's trying to he has to catch like rabbits and fish and things, and then he takes them to a merchant who gives him, like, if he gets 2 rabbits he can have a knife, and then now he's got the knife to help him hunt other rabbits and then when he wants to marry the merchant's daughter, the merchant says he needs to bring him hundreds of beavers, and so he goes out to kill hundreds and hundreds of beavers. And it's insane. It's like all the animals are played by humans in like mascot style animal costumes. And it seems crazy, but like it works. I mean, once you get into that world, it's intoxicating. It was made on so cheap. It's in grainy black and white, and all the slapstick stuff is blended in with like beautifully handcrafted animation. And even though it's cheap and it looks cheap, it also is seamless. I mean, you look at this, without wanting to give too much of it away, he like infiltrates the Beavers Dam, which is this huge like Bond villain lair. And normally if a script called for that, you'd need like $100 million to pull it off. But they pulled it off on the cheap for like a few $1,000s. And but it kind of looks amazing. I mean, we watched it on a big screen, and I couldn't see the seams. I couldn't see where live action meets animation. But it's just completely absurd. It's like a laugh a minute, and there's these ridiculous sound effects. It's almost completely silent. There's like no spoken dialogue. And yet you always know what the character's thinking. It's like a masterclass in visual storytelling. It's just the most ridiculous, anarchic thing ever. But I adored it. I was so taken with it. And I think it's going to show up on my top 10 at the end of this year, because There's nothing like it. It was amazing. And they were only showing it for one night. They had this one screening, but it was a packed house. Like, the cult audience shows up, and they were all there. And it's in the UK, you know, in America, you see all these videos of people, like, reactions to when Captain America picks up Thor's hammer, and there's this huge wah! We never get that in the UK. You know, if you see Andrew Garfield step into Spider-Man No Way Home and someone goes, woo! Someone will go, shut the fuck up. We don't do that. We don't react. But at the end of Hundreds of Beavers, there was a round of applause. I've never ever heard that in a British cinema, but there was a round of applause for this film, and it deserved it. The Tragedy of Macbeth. This was where Ethan Coen's first solo thing after the Coen brothers broke up was Drive Away Dolls. Joel Coen's first thing was The Tragedy of Macbeth, like a retelling of Macbeth in black and white with Denzel Washington as Macbeth, Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth. And it's interesting to see like where the very unique, idiosyncratic voice of the Coen brothers came from, where it's Ethan is the silly, goofy comedy guy, and Joel is like the deep, thoughtful, philosophical guy. And you see that in his version of Macbeth. And I think I need to accept I just don't get Shakespeare. I've tried with a lot of the Shakespeare films. I've never actually seen a Shakespeare play, but I think I would find that even less accessible. But unless it's turned into like West Side Story or The Lion King or something, I just don't get Shakespeare. And so I really appreciated this film. I appreciated how incredible the acting was and how beautiful it looked cinematography-wise. But the stories and the themes, I just don't get them. The language, I have no idea what they're talking about. It's like I'm watching a foreign film without the subtitles. It's like they're not speaking English. I just need to accept I'm not a Shakespeare guy, but this was a beautifully made film. Vivarium. This is some really creepy shit. It was almost like a creepy horror metaphor for like the trappings of suburbia and the trappings of parenthood. Because it's Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots, who are both great actors, both great in this. They're this young couple looking for their first house together, and this creepy real estate agent drives them out to this community in the middle of nowhere, where every house looks exactly the same, and he shows them this house, and then when they're looking around the house, they go back to find the estate agent, and he's just gone, he's nowhere to be seen. And so they get back in the car, and they go to leave, and every time they try and drive away, or find the exit of this gated community, they end up back at the house that he showed them to. And so it gets late, they end up just staying in the house. And food is getting dropped off for them, but they never see who's dropping it off, and they wait for it, but they never see them. And then one day they drop off a baby, and there's a note saying, like, raise the baby, and we will release you. And so they hate this fucking kid. They resent the kid, because they don't know why they're being trapped there. They don't know why they're being forced to raise this kid, but he's not that kid, and they don't like him. And I don't like him either. He's an annoying fucking kid. And so they're stuck in this house. They're forced to raise this kid. They can't leave the kid. They can't leave the house. It basically is this grand metaphor for don't get married, don't settle down, don't have a kid, because it's just a nightmare. It's a prison you have created for yourself. It was kind of like that Twilight Zone episode where the couple are, like a giant alien picks up this couple and gives them to its kid to have as like dolls in a dollhouse. And it's, you know, as it all wraps up and everything is explained, it's really creepy and unsettling. I don't know if the plot 100% holds together, but it was a really engaging, really compelling film. You know, I found myself genuinely like fascinated with like what's going on, how are they going to get out of here, who's put them here, you know, all these answers to these questions, and they answer the questions. Not 100% satisfying, but they answer the questions. Jaws. I rewatched Jaws because I'm trying to do a video about it, which is kind of coming together. But what can I add to the conversation at this point? It's a perfect film. It's the perfect, like, Hollywood entertainment blockbuster. It has great character work and it has great themes, but it also just works as a horror film and as a suspense thriller and as a Hitchcock film in the middle of the ocean. It's a fucking masterpiece, but I'm doing a video about it, so I won't go into it now, but it's great. If you didn't know, Jaws is a very good film. Dune Part 2. My friend Harry got Dune Part 2 on 4K for his birthday. So we came around and we watched it, and it's so fucking good. It's so great. It's so beautifully shot, and it's, you know, the perfect culmination of what was set up in Part 1 is all paid off beautifully in Part 2. And the themes of, like, the idea of the false prophet and the false messiah and the bullshit of religion, the bullshit of organized religion, and you know, it basically is like a sci-fi version of Life of Brian. It explores all the same themes as Life of Brian, of people who blindly believe in a messiah, even though when the messiah himself tells them, I'm not the messiah. But in a sci-fi world, in like Frank Herbert's weird gonzo sci-fi universe. And I've started reading Dune the book. I haven't gotten up to any of the events of part 2 yet. I'm like a third of the way through, and it's taken me a very long time. But I'm loving the book, and it's been interesting to see, read the descriptions of things that Frank Herbert wrote, that Denis Villeneuve has then taken, and Greg Fraser has taken, and turned them into a real, tangible thing you can look at. And it's been interesting to see the things that they've changed, and the things, either for clarity or brevity, but then he has nods to the things he's changed. Like in the book, Gurney sings to Paul every single scene he's in. He sings Paul one of his original songs. And the movie basically did away with that. But in part 2, you see Gurney singing a song. It's like, I know, I get that reference. 7 Days in Hell. This was fucking hilarious. I hadn't seen it since it was first aired on TV like 10 years ago, where it's Andy Samberg and Kit Harington as these two fictional tennis players who get into like a week-long tennis match. But I think 10 years ago when it was on, I didn't get it's being presented as if it's a real sports documentary and in that style. But the events are completely ridiculous. Like Andy Samberg has an orgy on the tennis court in front of everyone at Wimbledon. And Kit Harington, like, because he's making England look bad, the Queen tracks him down and beats the shit out of him. It's just completely absurd, but played totally straight, which is like one of the best things you can do in comedy, like airplane kind of style. It was so funny. It's like half an hour long, and there's just a laugh every 10 seconds. The Unauthorized Bash Brothers Experience. When this came out, I was blown away by it. It's Andy Samberg and his Lonely Island cohort, Akiva Schaffer, playing Mark Maguire and Jose Canseco, as if in the 90s or in the 2000s or something, they had made a hip-hop album together. And when I first watched it, visually I was blown away by it, because it looks amazing. But then I rewatched it, and I just didn't find it that funny. It's like one joke. It's what if these roided up baseball players made a rap album, But the songs themselves aren't even that funny, like they are in, like Lonely Island's songs usually are hilarious, and there's so many great jokes in them. But these were just songs. So it looked amazing, but I found where I was blown away by the style when I first watched it. This time, second time watching it, there's like no substance. It's got a lot of style and not much substance. The Acolyte. I really liked how the Acolyte was shaping up at the beginning, and I loved how Amandla Stenberg playing the twins has two totally distinctive characters. And initially I quite liked how the mystery was unfolding, that we see things out of order and from different perspectives and things, and Longlegs. This is a creepy fucking movie. This really lives up to its reputation that it's going to be one of the scariest films of the year. Nicolas Cage was amazing as the killer, as Longlegs, where he just went all out, balls to the wall. I'm gonna just hurl myself into this role of a crazy Satanist serial killer. And he's completely unrecognizable. Not just, he looks totally different. I've never seen him that pale. And he has like rosy lips. He has like a bit of an androgynous look. So he's unrecognizable physically, but also just in the performance. It's, if you didn't know it was Nicolas Cage, if you went in blind, you wouldn't be like, oh, it's Nicolas Cage. You'd go, oh, fuck, that's a serial killer. And Micah Monroe from It Follows, was so great in this. I really related to her character. She's very uncomfortable in just everyday life situations. She's very uncomfortable in social situations and conversations. And I related to that so much. I think she played it so well. And funny too, like her and Nicolas Cage are both really funny in this film, in a really dark way, and in a way that doesn't detract from the horror. It just enhances the film that it's this terrifying psychological horror slasher thriller, and it's a dark comedy. And Osgood Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, the director, you can call him a nepo baby, but he's a great filmmaker. He has a great eye, it was shot so beautifully. And he has a good eye for when to linger on a shot. There were so many shots, that leave a big empty space of the frame in the background empty. And so you just keep an eye out. You're on the edge of your seat, so tense, thinking, when's the jump coming? When's the killer gonna pop out in the background? And a lot of the time, nothing actually happens in the background, but you're expecting it to, so it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It keeps it compelling. It's really, really well directed. Ticket to Paradise. This I fucking loved. I honestly did not expect to love this as much as I did. I thought it would be, kind of a generic, feel-good, formulaic romantic rom-com. It's George Clooney and Julia Roberts reunited for, you know, they're playing like a bitter divorced couple who can't be in the same room together without sniping at each other and insulting each other. And Caitlin Dever plays their daughter, who's gone off to a tropical paradise, met a guy, fallen in love, and she's getting married. And George Clooney and Julia Roberts fly down to meet her there, and they both have the thought, she's rushing into this, she's not ready to get married, let's team up to break up this marriage. And that kind of brings them back together and gets them back on good terms with each other, and they start to get to know each other again. And they start to forget why they broke up and why they hate each other, and start to remember why they once loved each other. And it was great. I mean, like, their chemistry is fantastic, George Clooney and Julia Roberts, and they're both so funny. And the script was so good, there were so many funny situations in it, and a good emotional story where the Caitlin Dever's fiance is starting to figure out, like, okay, my fiance's parents don't like me and want me out of the picture. How can I win them over? And it just was like, I thought, like, I'll throw this on in the background, it'll be, you know, worth a couple of by the it. By the time it was almost over, I didn't want it to end. I wanted to keep watching this film and keep being with these characters. I fucking loved it so much. Lola Versus. This was, I was watching a video about Eben Moss Backrack, the guy who played Richie in The Bear, and his whole career, and how he never wanted to be a big star. Now he's going to be in Fantastic Four, and The Bear is the biggest show in the world. He is a huge star now. But he never wanted to be a famous actor. He was happy just being like that guy, happy being like the supporting player. I mean, I've loved him for years. I loved him in Girls as Desi. He was so funny in that. But in that video, they were talking about his early roles, and some of them I didn't even know he was in. Like, I know the films, but I didn't recognize him in them. Like, I didn't know he was in American Splendor, and I didn't know he was in the Royal Tenenbaums. He's the bellboy in the hotel where Royal's staying in the Royal Tenenbaums. I didn't fucking know that. I've seen that film 200 times. And one of those early roles that came up was Lola Versus, where he plays a love interest of Greta Gerwig. And as soon as I hear, like, okay, Eben Moss Backrack's in this, and Greta Gerwig's in this, I need to fucking watch this. So I bought the DVD, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I bought the DVD without checking the Rotten Tomatoes score. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it has like 30%. And all the critics are saying they're unlikable characters, you don't want to get invested in their story. But I disagree. Greta Gerwig is engaged to Joel Kinnaman at the start of the film, and then he breaks it off, and she's miserable, and she's trying to move on with her life. And then he comes back in, and he wants to get back together with her, and by that point, she's like, I don't know if I want to be with you. But she still really loves him and is attracted to him. But she started seeing other people, and Eben Moss Backrack's one of them. But I thought it was great. I didn't think the characters were unlikable. I thought they were real. They were like real human beings. They had flaws, but that's what makes an interesting character. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Maybe not as much as Frances Ha, which is in my top 3 of all time, maybe number 1. But, you know, as much as I enjoyed Maggie's Plan, or as much as I enjoyed Mistress America, you know, it was a great vehicle for Greta's talents and what she can bring to a role. Sausage Party Foodtopia. I thought I would just stick this on and see what it's like, and I ended up watching the whole thing in one sitting. I mean, I remember really enjoying the film when it came out, like 8 years ago, but the premise seemed a bit stretched thin there, where it's like, okay, they're talking food, they don't want to be eaten, and they like to have orgies and say swear words. Like, I get it. Do we need a whole series of this? Because it literally, I think there's like 8 half-hour episodes, so this is a 4-hour sequel to a cartoon about talking food. But it was an interesting premise, because it starts with a food uprising, and they manage to like conquer humanity, and they become the new dominant species on Earth, and they have to figure out society. They have to figure out how they're going to run society. And so it becomes, the first film was about religion, and this one is about democracy versus dictatorship. And it was not great. I mean, unless you really, really like the original Sausage Party, I can't say that I necessarily recommend it. But there were a couple of great sequences in it. Like, there's a scene where the Seth Rogen hot dog and Will Forte is one of the surviving humans who's like who they've got tied up in a treehouse. They like have a love scene that kind of reminded me of Team America, where it's really like fucked up and graphic, but it has this really passionate romantic undercurrent. And Michael Cera, I absolutely loved in this. I mean, there was a lot of great cast members from the original that didn't come back. Salma Hayek is not back as the taco. And they didn't pay off. The end of the first film is they realize they're in a cartoon world being voiced by actors, and they go through a portal to the real world to meet the actors playing them. They didn't do any of that in this sequel. But Michael Cera stole the fucking show. He was hilarious in this. The Godfather. I rewatched this to do the Dummies Guide, which I really enjoyed doing. This is the first one. The first 3 films I'd done Dummies Guides of was 2001, Taxi Driver, and Blade Runner. I actually love the films. But with Godfather, I've never really loved The Godfather as a film. I've admired it and appreciated it. But I've never watched it and gone, that's amazing. Because I watched it for the first time as a teenager and I didn't get it. And I've tried to revisit it since then a couple of times and never really gotten it. But to do the Dummies Guide, I'm sitting there with a notepad and I'm trying to take down notes and trying to deconstruct what are these themes and what's these scenes about. And it all kind of fell into place, that it's this incredible study of power and betrayal and masculinity and family. And it all clicked into place, and I was like, oh, it is amazing. It is an amazing film. So, you heard it here first, folks. The Godfather is a very well-made film. Terms of endearment. I really love James L. Brooks as a filmmaker. I love broadcast news, and as good as it gets. He was sort of like pre-Judd Apatow. He was the guy making big star-studded crowd-pleasing comedies with a really deep, dramatic, personal, relatable undercurrent before Judd Apatow. But I'd never seen Terms of Endearment. I'd never seen what's arguably his most iconic film. I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. Gets off to a bit of a slow start, but once it starts to hone in on its focus is on Deborah Winger as this young woman trying to make it. She's starting a family and she's trying to make a life for herself. And Shirley MacLaine as her mom, who's very erratic but also very loving. And it's all about their relationships, where Deborah Winger's married to Jeff Daniels. But then she meets John Lithgow and she starts to have feelings for him, and she's not sure whether she wants to stay faithful to her husband. And then she finds out that he hasn't been faithful anyway. And Shirley MacLaine is in a bit of a relationship with her neighbor, Jack Nicholson, who's this boorish, arrogant, self-obsessed guy who on paper, she hates him. She feels like she hates him, but she also can't resist his charms, and she's starting to fall for him. But it's really about the mother and daughter's relationship with each other. And then it takes a really sad turn when it's becomes about terminal illness. But it was a great film. I actually was really moved by it and really enjoyed the performances and thought it was very well written and very well directed. And it's another one like Lola Versus, but much more effectively than Lola Versus, where it's about three-dimensional people. They're flawed, but you're interested in them because they're real people. The Pretty One. This was a really interesting little comedy, a little kind of indie comedy where Zoe Kazan plays these twins, and one of them is really shy and socially awkward, and people don't really notice her. And the other one is really pretty and confident and outgoing and cool, and everyone loves her. And the cool twin invites the shy twin to come and live with her. But then as they're driving to their new place, they get into a car accident, and the pretty one, as the title refers to her, is killed. But on the journey, the shy one went into a hairdresser and got the exact same hairstyle as her sister. So when they find one of them so gruesomely killed that they can't identify her, and the other one has survived and has that hairstyle, they're like, okay, so the pretty cool one survived, and the shy awkward one is dead. And the shy, awkward one wakes up and initially has a bit of amnesia, but she eventually realizes who she is, and that they think the other twin died when they think she's the pretty one and that the shy one died, but the shy one's alive, the pretty one died. But she just goes along with it. She just embodies her dead sister, because at the funeral, no one has anything to say she goes to her own funeral and no one has anything to say about her, so she realizes, okay, as that person, I didn't matter. Now is my chance to be a person who matters. And she just lives her sister's life. She goes to her sister's apartment that she was going to move into and meets her roommate, played by Jake Johnson, and starts going to her job and things, and just uses the fact that she may have amnesia from the accident to get all of her sister's friends to explain who she is and what she does for a living, and so she can do it herself. It's hard to explain, but the film tells the story very efficiently, and I'm not doing it justice at all. I'm making it sound way more confusing than it is. But as with any of these things, eventually the jig is up. Eventually she's going to be found out, and it's going to be very uncomfortable. And it was a really funny movie and like a quirky comedy. But it uses the tension of that really well, that eventually she's going to be found out, and she can only keep this lie going for so long. It was really good, and Zoe Kazan and Jake Johnson were so great as like the leads. Rick and Morty Season 7. This is the most recent season with the new voice actors. And I watched it when it was on. I watched it week by week and reviewed it, and then it just came to Netflix, so I binge watched it all in one go. And because I remembered not really liking this season, and there are still a lot of episodes I really don't like. The one with the intervention I don't really like. The one with Ice-T and the number people versus the letter people. I get that they're going for like a Transformers vibe, like an 80s sci-fi cartoon vibe, but it was just so labored and so stretched so thin. And who does a Rick and Morty episode without Rick? There was a couple of episodes this season where they had either just Rick or just Morty. It's like, the fucking show's called Rick and Morty, and the joy of it is their relationship. But the suicide spaghetti episode was really good. That was a really interesting, really weird satire of meat consumption and the ethics of eating animal products. And the one where they discover the afterlife, they go to Valhalla, and they have to like take on the Pope with a monster squad. That was a great fucking episode. And the final episode with the fear hole was fantastic. I thought it was amazing. You know, that one really was about Rick and Morty's relationship on a really deep, intimate, personal level. And I don't want to spoil what happens, but it basically is all about Morty worrying, am I replaceable, or does Rick really love me? And the ending, there's just a little moment, but the ending makes it clear as day that Rick really cares about Morty, and he does really love Morty. And he's not replaceable. And it was just a nice little moment, but it was a perfect ending to a very rocky hit and miss season. Longlegs. Went to watch Longlegs again because when me and my dad watched it the first time, my sister couldn't make it to join us, and she really wanted to watch it, and me and my dad both wanted to watch it again anyway because there's a lot to unpack in this fucking movie. And I was hoping there was certain things in the plot that I would be able to understand a bit better, knowing what's coming, and you know, being able to follow it a bit better. But I'm still stumped. I still don't fucking know. You know, why does the gun jam, or what's with the dolls, or is Longlegs the devil or a servant of the devil, or I don't know. I still have no answers, but I still found it a very captivating film, and I still found it a very creepy film. Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. This was like the DreamWorks animation adaptation of Captain Underpants, which I think has been in development like since the Captain Underpants books came out, but it only just got made about like 6 or 7 years ago. But I love this. I mean, those Captain Underpants books were like a staple of my childhood. I grew up obsessed with them. I loved George and Harold and their exploits, and how they were kids who drew their own superhero comics, because I was that kid. I was that dorky fucking kid creating his own superheroes. And I did, you know, I hadn't read those books in 15 years. And I didn't even really remember what they were about, but as soon as I started watching the film, it all came flooding back to me. George and Harold and Melvin and Professor Poopy Pants and Mr. Krupp and all these characters and the stories all started flooding back to me. And that was a perfect adaptation. Like, it was perfectly cast. I mean, especially Kevin Hart as George and Thomas Middleditch as Harold. You know, I don't know that I had voices in my head when I was reading them as a kid, but if I had to put voices to those characters, those are the perfect voices to give those characters. And Ed Helms as Mr. Krupp. It was so good. There were so many laughs in it, and I thought it just perfectly captured like the spirit of the books. You know, and now I want a sequel. I mean, it's called the first epic movie. I want to see the second and third and fourth epic movies. It was honestly so wonderful. Like, I was expecting just a breeze of nostalgia, and I got that. I got the breeze of nostalgia. But it's a great fucking film, too. Twisters. There's another one me and my dad went to see, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, you know, it's not going to win any Oscars. It was never going to win any Oscars, but I liked it. It was a great, like, disaster film, and I really loved Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell's chemistry. I thought they had wonderful chemistry. Normally with these films, these action-y films, when there's a love story, I'm not into the love story. I'm like, just get back to the tornadoes. Stop flirting with each other. I don't care about this romance. Like with Quiet Place Day One. But in Twisters, I was really into the romance just because they were so charismatic and had such great chemistry, and the romantic tension really felt real. And it was interesting to watch these characters get to know each other better. You know, that her story was very archetypal, where the opening scene, her whole team gets killed in one of her experiments, and then she's out of the field for a few years, but she's reluctantly drawn back in. That's literally the exact same thing that happens at the beginning of Under Paris. It's like a very standard thing for a disaster film to do. But Daisy Edgar Jones played it really well, and you know, you really buy the trauma, and you buy, like when she first gets back to Storm Chase and she gets to a tornado and she has a panic attack. That felt real. And with Glenn Powell, you know, his character is introduced as the arrogant, self-serving celebrity. He's like the Storm Chaser YouTuber. He's got a YouTube channel where he goes after tornadoes. And she thinks, you know, a lot of us are here for real scientific purposes. You're just a bozo with a camera. And for a while that seems to be the case, and Glenn Powell plays that part great. But then she gets to know him a bit better. You know, she thinks he's just all about himself, and he's put his face all over merchandise, and he sets up shop and sells it at these tornado sites. But then you find out, like, he's selling the merch to buy food and water for survivors, and he's helping the survivors. And he actually does have credentials. He actually did go to school and get a degree, and he knows what he's talking about. He knows the science. He's not just there for the thrill as much as he loves the thrill. You know, I thought it was way more depth to those characters than there should have been. And I think what that is you've got the director of Minari doing it. So you've got a director who knows character and who is interested in telling intimate, character-driven stories. You know, you get him to do the movie about tornadoes. He delivers the tornado tornado stuff. There's plenty of great tornado stuff, but you get an interesting character piece too, and I really enjoyed it. Brief Encounter. This is the David Lean film from the 40s, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was another one, like The Best Years of Our Lives, where it's from the 40s, from 100 years ago, or 80 years ago, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels modern, apart from the fact that it's black and white, and it's shot on film. It doesn't feel like it's from that long ago. It's about these two people who happen to meet, and they have romantic feelings for each other, but it's not, they're married, and it's at a time in society where that's really frowned upon. It's always been frowned upon, but in the 40s, it's like, if a married woman even looks at another man, she's a whore. It's that kind of societal mentality. And if she gets seen having a coffee with this guy at the train station by one of her friends, it's like, what the fuck's going on here? It was a really great story, and it's the reason I wanted to watch it was because I'd heard about the structure of it, where it starts off in the train station cafe, and it's focused on other people, but you see this man and this woman having a conversation in the background that seems to be a serious conversation, and then one of the woman's friends comes in and interrupts them and is talking their ears off, and then the guy has to leave and get on his train. And at the time you don't think anything of it, but then you watch the whole story, you see their whole love story, and then you get back to that ending, you get back to that goodbye, and suddenly it's the most heartbreaking thing you've ever seen. And I thought that was pulled off so brilliantly by David Lean, who, is known for his big epics, but this was a really intimate, small scale thing, and it was beautiful. Riley's First Date. I saw this on Disney Plus. I guess it was like a short film they did. Pixar had done just after Inside Out had come out, the first one. And me and my sister were browsing through Disney Plus and stuck this on. And it's so funny. It's like 10 minutes long. And it's about, it's Riley's first date with a question mark. I mean, we were initially like, a date? Isn't she like 11 or 12? Isn't that a bit young? But I think it's with a question mark because it's not even really a date. The parents think it is because her boy's picking her up. But they're just going to join a group of friends. It's not even really a date. But it's more about the parents' emotions. You see how the parents' emotions are reacting to this boy coming to pick up their daughter, and you see the boy's emotions, and it was just so funny. It's only 10 minutes long, so if I start talking about specifics, I'll basically give away the whole film. But it was really funny. It was like way more funny than like what is essentially a DVD extra has any right to be. The Walking Dead. I've been rewatching The Walking Dead like from the beginning because a few weeks ago I had to write a list for work about like the early moments that like defined The Walking Dead, and that brought back a lot of fond memories of some really cool things that happened in the show, like the big twist when they open the barn and Sophia walks out, and they've spent the whole season looking for Sophia. They think she's out there, and she's been dead and reanimated in the barn the whole time. And then I watched a video by Friendly Space Ninja about the downfall of The Walking Dead and how it went from being the highest rated, most beloved show on TV to something no one was watching anymore, or even only the most dedicated fans gave a shit anymore. But early in the video, when he's talking about the early days of the show and what a hit it was, that brought back some very fond memories. I mean, The Walking Dead was like my favorite thing ever when it was on, in the early days when it was on. And it was like appointment viewing in my house. Every week we'd all gather in the living room and watch the new Walking Dead. And so I kind of wanted to bring that back. And when it was on, my dad stopped watching after Negan killed Glenn, because that was just so gratuitously gory and so unnecessary, to do that to such a beloved character. I mean, Glenn was like on par with Daryl as like, don't touch this fucking guy, we love him too much. But to kill him off at all, but to kill him off in that way, in that gruesomely, way over the top, horrifying way, it was like, why are we watching this? This is supposed to be entertainment. And I think he made the right call stopping there, because me and my sister kept going for another couple of seasons. But we were really forcing ourselves to do it, because we really weren't enjoying it. There's the people who live at the tip, the garbage dump people. And then Negan, they turned from being the big bad to being like an ally. It just went way, way downhill. That was like the moment the show died, when he killed Glenn. That was the fucking end. Beginning of the end, anyway. So I don't know how far I'm going to get with this rewatch. I'm really loving it so far. There's like so many great things that I remembered that I've enjoyed watching again, and so many things that I'd forgotten about that I've really enjoyed rediscovering. And I'm in the middle of season 4 now, and it's been flying by so far, but I'm still in the golden era. I have a feeling around season 6, season 7, that's going to drop off hard, and it's going to come grinding to a halt. And I think there's like 11 seasons total, so I don't think I'm gonna make it to the very end, but we'll see. I'm gonna try to, and then I'm maybe even gonna watch some of the spin-offs. I might watch the Daryl Dixon show and the Rick and Michonne show. I don't know about the Maggie and Negan show. I mean, how would you even justify that? A Maggie-Negan team-up after what Negan did to Glenn? But I'm gonna keep an open mind. I'm gonna see how far I get with it. But I am coming to the end of when it's great. And I've gotten through all that stuff in like a week. And it's probably going to take me like a month at a time to get through season 9, season 10. I don't even want to think about that. Deadpool and Wolverine. By the time this is released, I will have released my Deadpool and Wolverine review, so don't need to go into it too much here. If you want to know what I thought of the movie, check out the review. But what a fucking movie, though. I mean, I can't believe they kept some of those cameos a secret. I mean, obviously some of them, they'd announced that Jennifer Garner would play Elektra, and they'd had Daphne Keane as X-23 in the trailer. They'd given some of it away, but some of the big ones, I don't know how they kept them under wraps. But it's, I mean, I said it in the review, but it's everything you want it to be. If you're a Marvel fan and you've been looking forward to seeing Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool opposite Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, bickering with each other and tearing through the Marvel multiverse and bumping into all kinds of deep-cut cameo characters and, you know, everything you want this film to be, it's that and more. And, you know, I've only seen it once so far, but I'm going to at least see it at least one more time, and probably a couple of times. Because what a fucking movie. I mean, it's the kind of thing, like, you watch it and you can't believe they got away with it. I mean, this is a Disney film. This is a Disney release. But, yeah, I've seen so much cynical response to it of, you know, oh, it's the death of cinema, it's so commercialized, and what, you know, but it delivers the goods. It's a wildly entertaining fucking film, you know? And it's a film made for Marvel fans. So non-Marvel fans hating it, that's just par for the course. That's gonna happen. But if you're a Marvel fan, and especially if you've been a Marvel fan since way back when, since the days of the Fantastic Four films and the X-Men films and the Blade films, this is for you. This is a love letter to you. Alright, so that's everything I watched in July, and a lot of good stuff. Some terrible stuff. Baghead was awful, and Poolman was every bit the piece of shit it was built up to be. An Escape from LA, I was very disappointed by. But there's also some surprises, you know. I didn't remember 7 Days in Hell being as absolutely hysterical as it was. I have hated Jersey Girl for a decade, and now I realize I just wasn't ready for it, or it just wasn't the film I was expecting it to be, and have reappraised it and think it's wonderful now. You know, what a roller coaster of a month. Great way to cap off a full year of everything I watched. And here's to another year. Here's to another 5 years. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.